Speaking of blazers, this is another one that I really love because it's very lightweight and very comfortable, but it's definitely oversized. Again, you can see from the way the sleeve is here, and even where the seam is at the shoulder, that it's a little beyond where my natural shoulders are, so it's not the ideal fit if I want a fitted blazer. However, if I'm going for an oversized blazer look where I can layer it over things, especially for winter, this works just fine. I love how a sweatshirt, like specifically a hoodie, looks with a blazer over it and having the hood on top. It just makes it more dynamic and interesting. You have the structure of the blazer on the outside, you have the casual looseness of a sweatshirt underneath. Even if it's a fitted sweatshirt, the hood makes it feel more casual, and I personally love that dynamic. Something to keep in mind, especially with blazers, the inside of the cuff here is coming apart, especially because it's a looser material. I think that just ripped really quickly on the last person who had it. So that's something that I will need to fix, is to make sure that the cuff is sewn in so it doesn't come undone on my hands as I'm moving around and doing things. However, this is another blazer that I actually prefer how it looks when the sleeves are rolled up anyways, so it might be a fix that I don't need to spend too much time on, since I will most likely be wearing it with sleeves rolled up. Even if I wear it over something like a sweatshirt or just a sweater or a long sleeve shirt, layer-wise, I still think having the sleeve underneath the cuff of the blazer will look cool, especially if it's a dynamic color or if it's pulling out something from the pattern in the blazer itself, like this light blue or even this gold on the stripes. It could make it more interesting too. But typically, this is how I would wear it anyways, so I'm not too worried about where that sleeve hits on my hands anymore. And if I'm wearing something underneath this, it's going to help with where the shoulders are, and there's tiny little shoulder pads in here anyways that create a little bit more shape, so it's not just totally loose and flowy and falling off of my body. And the body fits really well on this, which is something that I have a hard time finding. Pro tip, if you are trying on especially outerwear, you want to make sure that you can do the Hulk test or the hug test, whichever you prefer. I like the Hulk test. But make sure that when you go to give somebody a hug, or if you feel like you're gonna, Hulk out, you can actually move your arms back and forth like this, and it doesn't feel like the material is straining or like you're gonna rip it, because you don't want to Hulk out of your shirt, especially if you just bought it. So that's a pro tip to keep in mind, and this has the flexibility that I need to be able to move how I want to be able to drive when I'm in the car with no problem, and that's really important to me, more so than having the sleeves be too long, because that's an easy fix or an easy alteration if you decide to go that route. So here's a nice utility jacket. I love the casualness of a utility jacket, but if it has some structure to it, even better. This has really good lines to it, and it's got lots of zippers and buttons that add some accent with the gold hardware on there, which I also really love. Something to keep in mind, especially if you're looking at a jacket like this, make sure that the zippers work, especially on things that you know you're going to want to use. Make sure they can actually open, how the pockets are, so that they can fit the things that you need to fit in them, and that they close. Those are big things. If it has ties on it, make sure that they can move, so that way if you want to tie it, you can actually tie it when you need to. And of course, make sure that the buttons are where they're supposed to be, and that they can actually button for when you would like to close your jacket. Ta-da! Another good thing to check is if an item has a hood, make sure the hood fits how you want it to fit. There's nothing worse than trying an outfit, realizing it's a hood, going to put it on and going, this doesn't actually fit how it needs to fit. So, put on, good to go. Put off, also good to go. Another tip when you're trying on outerwear is make sure that it hits where you want in the body. So for example, I'm wearing high-waisted jeans right now. I will typically want my jacket to cover where my waistline is in my pants. So if I were to wear a lows rise with this, I would probably have the shirt untucked and that would come out from beneath the jacket. Just things to keep in mind in how you're going to layer pieces and how you would like it to look, and if it makes sense for your closet and how you wear things normally. Something else to keep in mind is you're a lot of times going to receive items from a thrift store, even a consignment store sometimes, that have been washed and so they fit a little weird. For example, you can tell there's a lot of wrinkling and bunching around the waistline here because that's where there's elastic, so that when you button it, it can still fit fitted against your body. But because it probably went through the dryer, it's a little bit messed up. And if you still don't quite love how the length of the sleeves look on a jacket, it has buttons and it has the stretch to it, there's nothing saying you can't roll the sleeves. Because we love how a good rolled sleeve looks with any outfit. I feel like a lot of times you'll find with the collar of a jacket or a blazer or a shirt that you've gotten that's been washed improperly, it's gonna fit a little bit weird. So that's gonna be the specific area that you wanna focus on. If you want to iron it, if you want to wash it and make sure that it dries as flat as possible, keep an eye on that and do what you can to flatten it during the drying process. Interestingly enough, the entire reason why I wore minimal makeup today was for trying things like this on, especially if you have a light colored item and something that's going to be fitted and a higher neck. It can be really challenging to try things on and worry about the makeup getting smeared onto it. So that's always something that I try to be really conscious of, is if it has a high neck or if it's going to be a really fitted top or a sweater, making sure that I do my makeup after so that I limit the amount of foundation that's going to end up on the collar of my shirt. This is another wool sweater, so something to keep in mind again is checking the seams. It does have a small hole right in the shoulder here. Again, I don't mind because I'm going to try mending it myself, and if that doesn't work, I actually think this could be really cute if we did some alterations to it and made it a sleeveless sweater. We'll see how that goes. I might need to get some advice from my sister who's a seamstress and find out what she thinks, if it's even possible. But again, with any sweater, you're going to want to make sure that it fits comfortably. And are you going to wear it underneath something or over something? Another thing to keep in mind, especially with lighter colored items, be it sweater or blouses, a lot of times you're going to be able to see through the material if you're wearing any layers underneath. So I'm wearing a camisole under this, and while it's the same color as what the actual sweater is, you can see the seams through it because the material is tighter and thinner. So keep that in mind. Just know that if you're wearing something underneath, especially if you're wearing undergarments that have some sort of print or pattern or even just a texture on them, there's a possibility that it can show through the sweater as well. Just be mindful when you're trying things on. I have mixed opinions when it comes to bodycon dresses for myself. I think that they can look fantastic, but you can definitely tell when something is a higher quality material as opposed to a cheaper one because of the way that it fits. So yes, bodycon is fitted to the body and a lot of times is short as well, which this particular dress is on the shorter side for sure. It still somehow makes the high school dress code because my fingertips are just at the hem of it, so technically I guess that passes, but barely. The way that I can tell that this is not as good quality is because the area where it needs to be more fitted, it's not. It's definitely tied around my hips, which, to be fair, biggest part of my body. But if you notice, when I turn to the side, there's all this extra material here because it's pulling right at the hips, but it's not, it's overstretched in this area. So for me, it just looks like it's too big for me, which it is, to be fair. I also have to be very mindful of the undergarments I'm wearing with this because it's so tight, and because I personally don't love how a bra looks when it's not intended to be shown through an item. And even with trying on a sports bra or different high neck cut bras with this, I found that they still were showing on the sides because this is such a tight cut to the collarbone. So I'm wearing a strapless bra with it, but again, that limits what I can wear with this item. But even with wearing a strapless bra with it, I still don't love it. So I think it's the item itself that's just not really great for me. One thing that you can do if you find that it fits well everywhere else but the waist is still too big, you can always put a belt over the top of it and help cinch the waist in, like so. So with putting a belt on, it definitely pulls the waist in around the back, but what I find is even with it doing that, it's still pulling the material in a little bit of a strange way because there's still excess material here. And because of that, it's creating lines and wrinkles that I don't love, especially if it's supposed to be a bodycon dress that's fitted to the entire body and not bunching and wrinkling in strange places. So while I'm glad that I tried it to see how I felt because I wanted to add more prints into my wardrobe, unfortunately it just doesn't fit and I don't love the print enough to be able to wear it or alter it in ways that I really enjoy. I think somebody else can just enjoy this themselves as is and it will fit better for their body, so I'm going to redonate it. This is another one that's a bit out of my comfort zone, which is why I wanted to try it, because it's always good to push those comfort zones in ways that you're comfortable with. I don't love the color, personally. I thought, let me try to add a little bit more color, maybe some pinks and peaches into my wardrobe, but it just doesn't really excite me, and I feel like it doesn't do much for me personally. The fit is okay. It does actually fit in the body because it's a wrap top and you can adjust where the waist is on it. That's nice. But because it has a seam where the waist is, it does also give you some limitations of where exactly you can tie this without it starting to look weird. The other thing I don't love about this is how high it's cut. I have a very long torso, as I mentioned before, so even with wearing these high-waisted jeans, I feel like it's almost too short. So that can also be because it's rolling up a little bit, and that just happens over time, especially with thinner material like this. It can roll, something to be mindful of as you're washing things and drying it if you want to make sure that it's lying flat so that doesn't happen. That helps for sure. But between the sleeves being a little bit too flowy while simultaneously being pointy, it really just doesn't do much for me. And I would have to wear something underneath because, again, it is a lower cut, even as a wrap. I could try to be really specific about tying it so it's tighter, but then it's just tight, and I feel like putting that much effort into this, I don't love it enough to do that already, and it's just okay. Somebody else will love it better, and it will look better on them anyway, so this is another one I'm going to redonate. So this is another one that very clearly I was thinking Ren Fair season for. I guess I could wear it in my day-to-day, but I don't know if I want people to hear me coming every time I take a step and know that I'm there. I like being a sneaky rogue in my day-to-day life. The downside of this is it is very much too big. There was no tag on it, so there was definitely no way to know the size unless I took out my measuring tape, which is also an option. You can always bring a measuring tape with you, and if you know your sizes, you can measure the pieces if you can't try them on in person. But I really wanted to make this work, and I thought maybe I could layer things over or under it and it would still fit. Even with doing that, when I layered things over top of this to try and make sure it fit, like a corset or a harness or anything that had straps on it, it didn't really matter. There was just extra fabric and I couldn't get it to really tuck in properly to make it look like it was supposed to fit. It's just, unfortunately, too big. And even if I relax my shoulders a little bit, you can tell it starts falling off, which is not ideal. Obviously, it would also have to be worn over something because even with the camisole on, you can see straight through this. And personally, I'm not comfortable wearing transparent things without something underneath, so I'd have to be really conscious of what I'm layering underneath and make sure it feels like it went with the top. So most likely not a nude camisole. I would probably do something in black or something that somehow picked up the silver on all of the little accessories and sparkly trinkets on here. But again, unfortunately, it's just too big. You can even tell when I pull it up, this is where the shoulder is supposed to be. Like this. And also so that the sleeve, it still can move really nicely, as opposed to where this actually fits on me. Off my shoulders.
Fits on me. Off my shoulders.
So again, best intentions. I think there was some really great potential for a piece like this, which inspires me and makes me think maybe I want to look for something like this for Ren Fair season in the upcoming years to create a costume that has all of these accent pieces already on it, maybe something that has a little bit more flow to the sleeve. I love all of those details of this especially. So that's something I can look for in the future now that I've tried this and I know that's something I would really like. Unfortunately, it's just not in this piece that I can actually wear it if I want to keep my clothes on, which I did. You know, I said to be mindful and make sure that the shirt that has buttons actually has buttons and it has buttonholes that aren't ripped. Here's another thing to keep in mind. How hard is it to actually button the item? And are you willing to spend that much time if it has a lot of buttons and it's not easy to do? It's a very strange and unique problem, I think, but this sweater in particular is rather challenging to button, and it takes a little bit more time than I was expecting. The other thing about this that I find interesting is it's such a high neck collar and it buttons all the way up. So for folks who don't like high necks, this is obviously out of the question. I don't mind having a high neck collar, I think it's fine. I just don't know how I feel about it on a sweater, especially this type of cardigan. It's interesting, it's different. I don't know if it's for me. I feel like I would need to try it with a couple different outfits to really get a feel for it. I don't love it right away, but I also don't hate it immediately. So it's more or less figuring out, does this feel like me, and does it fit how I want it to fit? The other thing I'm noticing is in the body, there is supposed to be a waist here that is more cinched. You can tell by the different paneling and the material, but it's kind of just straight on me because it is, I think, a little bit larger, and it might have been shrunk in the dryer. From what I can feel in the shoulder, the seam right here at the arm is still pretty tight, even on me, and I'm not wearing a shirt underneath. So if I was going to wear this as an outer layering piece, that's something I would be very aware of, is how tight the shirt underneath would have to be to actually fit comfortably, because this is already pretty snug in my shoulders, even though the shoulder is off of the shoulder from where I would normally want it to be on a sweater. I'll have to unbutton all of these. I think I like how it looks better with the collar versus having it buttoned all the way up, which is something to keep in mind is how are you going to wear it if something has a versatile collar or different pieces of it that you can wear in different ways. How would you prefer to wear it? And would you actually wear it the way that it was intended or find an alternate way to wear it? Good things to know when you're trying pieces on and exploring if it makes sense to keep it in your closet, or if you're not going to go through that much effort, might as well leave it, or you can always redonate it in a situation like this where it was part of a grab bag of items and we wanted to test it out for ourselves to see what we thought. I don't know. I really can't explain why I was so invested in bringing this home with me. Pretty sure it's a cheerleader sweatshirt. I've never once in my life been a cheerleader, nor have I ever really had the skill set to become a cheerleader. Maybe that's why. It's right up there with like Renaissance fair style items that it's like, I wish I could wear this every day, or I wish I could embody this person a little bit more, but I don't have that skill set myself. So it's more of a costume. But I do feel like I could wear this for more than a costume because it's pretty comfortable. And I love that it is still fitted in the body, even though it is a more oversized type of style. It's not as soft as I would hope. It's a bit coarser, just the material is coarse, but it's a thicker material too. And because it's a little bit bigger, I can layer things underneath this if I want to. The one downside of this particular sweater that I noticed immediately was there is almost no give in the collar. So when I am putting it on, I can guarantee that I'm going to have staticky hair and I might be missing my eyebrows depending on how tightly this gets pulled against my face, which is again why I wore minimal makeup to try this on, because it's a white color and my makeup would transfer really easily to this. So just things to keep in mind when you're trying items on and wearing makeup and making sure that it doesn't get on your clothing in the process. Something else is because it is more oversized, I don't mind that the cuffs of this are on the oversized to my fingers almost, but if I really didn't like that and I wanted to, I think because they are the long cuffs, you can easily fold them up and it looks great that way. Ta-da! I also like the length of this. I think it's not too long in the body and it's not a crop, so it hits really nicely on my waist personally and at my hip line, and I can still easily move around in this without a problem, which is great. And I'm already quite warm, even from just trying this on, so it's a good winter item. It's just a question of, do I want to feel like a cheerleader during any conversation if I were to wear this on a day-to-day basis? I guess it's all in how you style it, right? And if I need to work on my splits. Maybe a good motivator.